a chance to meet yet, I'm Gina Anderson. I'm Executive Director of the Germanic-American Institute, and thank you so much for joining us for today's event. It was a sold-out event with a waiting list, and it's just so lovely to be back in person and hosting ACG events again. So we're doing this event in partnership with the American Council on Germany. We'll be welcoming Krista Tiefenbacher-Hudson. She can give you a little bit more information about that, as well as Global Minnesota. Where's Tim? He's our representative from Global Minnesota. So all three organizations came together to sponsor this event. If you do not know about the GAI, please chat with me on your way out. I would love to tell you more about who we are and what we do. We offer every level of language class imaginable. So if it's been your dream to learn German or to pick up learning German again, because it is a lifelong endeavor, as I can tell you, we have classes here for that. And I also just want to do 2 plugs for upcoming events. We are very proud to announce the launch this year of the Twin Cities German Film Festival. GAI is producing that at the Main Theater in Minneapolis, and that will be November 3rd through 6th. We have information here about all the films that we'll be featuring. And then December 3rd and 4th, back here at the GAI, will be our Christmas in Germany event. So that will feature vendors, German food, activities for kids, the trains, and of course, Glühwein, right? Because you cannot have a German event, Christmas event, without Glühwein. So with that, I would like to welcome our friend and longtime GAI supporter, Krista Tiefenbacher-Hudson from the American Council on Germany.
Thank you so much, Tina, for your welcome, and a warm welcome to all of you who joined us here today for this luncheon event. It was wonderful to work with the GAI in organizing this luncheon today, and also have the support of Global Minnesota, and at our table there are a number of Global Minnesota members, so I think it's great to attract people who may not have been familiar with the GI or with the American Council on Germany before. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the American Council on Germany, or ACG for short, this organization was founded in 1952 by a group of American officials, both in military and civilian roles in Germany after World War II, and it included John McCloy, who was the first US High Commissioner in Germany after World War II. And their thinking and objective was to restore the relationship between Germany and the United States after this devastating war. And they wanted to create a forum where Germans and Americans can meet, exchange thoughts, and start learning to work together again. It's been 70 years, and over the decades, I think the ACG has contributed greatly to this communication and to building relationships. And we have, just as an example, the kind of projects that bring together Americans, Germans, and Europeans include not only the speaker tours that the ACG organizes and helps bring speakers like our guest today, Ambassador Schlüter, to the United States, but they also organize study tours, fellowships, conferences, and some of you also get the bi-weekly news digest that I send out to my list here, and of course it goes out to a list throughout the United States from our New York office. It helps us have informed discussions about topics that affect us all on both sides of the Atlantic. So it has been a real privilege to work with this organization. And today, of course, we're holding our first live ACG event after the years of the pandemic. And our topic is most timely. It will be Zeitenwende, setting new priorities in foreign security and energy policy in Germany as a result of Russia's brutal war in Ukraine. Our guest speaker, whom it is my great pleasure to introduce to all of you, is retired Ambassador Stefan Schlüter. His long career with the German Foreign Office included tours in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Israel, and the United States, as well as positions in Bonn and Berlin in roles that included worldwide responsibilities. His foreign assignment as Consul General in San Francisco in 2017 was his final assignment. He retired from the Foreign Service in 2017, but he has not been lost to the world of diplomacy. Not only is he traveling the world to share his thoughts, he's also the program director of the academy, let me say, it's the Diplomatic Academy in Berlin.
A program, not the program, but we have about a dozen of those.
Oh. Thank you for clarifying. So a program director at the Diplomatic Academy in Berlin, where the German Foreign Office trains the next generation of German diplomats. So today, Ambassador Schlüter will discuss the domestic and international implications of the impact of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's speech back in February about Zeitenwende and the tremendous shift in Germany's policies over the past 8 months. Please be aware, if that is still the case, that his remarks will be recorded, as will be the Q&A following the remarks. With that, it is my great pleasure, and I invite you to welcome our guest today, Ambassador Schlüter.
Well, Christo, thank you very much for your kind words of introduction, and thank you, Gina, for hosting this and organizing this. This is absolutely great. So, at least the lunch was good. So, what's following now? Let's see, But that was at least something, that you can look back to. And you reminded me also a little bit of my age, because when you said that the ACG was founded in 1952, that's where I was born. So, same year, and I hope I come out as good as well, as the ACG. So they're doing absolutely great work. And this is one of the things, that we are sorely missing now. We need more links and more organizations who are working on filling what politicians always say, transatlantic relations, bilateral relations, or whatever. You have to fill this with life. And there are partnerships, there are sister city partnerships. There are so many liaisons the connections between people, and what we really miss actually is that huge number of American servicemen who served after the war in Germany, and who came back and served also as our ambassadors. There was so much bringing back knowledge of Germany, and this is sorely missed now. We had many of them, and now they are down to 15,000, 20,000 or so, and that's really not enough. So all the more important is work like the American Council in Germany, who is trying to foster these relations. Now, talking about the Zeitenwende also has come to the US, to all over the world. Just look out of the window. You see the Ukrainian flag flying there. So this is something, that wouldn't have happened a year ago. This is something that shows that what happened on February 23rd is something that really, 24th, really changed the world, and definitely not for the better. We had only 3 days after the invasion of Putin in Ukraine. Olaf Scholz, our Chancellor, gave a speech in the Bundestag. It was a special session. It was a Sunday, actually, so they came together for a special session, and he gave a remarkable speech that showed what has happened in those actually 72 hours since the invasion. he said that this is not just an invasion of a neighboring country, this is actually a destruction of the security system that we had in place in Europe for the last 50 years, since the Helsinki Accords. It destroyed everything, you know, these few morning hours of February 24th. And he had some ideas in his speech how to respond to that aggression. The first, of course, was that he said that support for Ukraine is for everybody the most important task right now. And this is not just to help another country, to assist or give handouts. This is actually something we help them to defend us. Because this aggression is just the first step, and actually it was not the first step. First he took Crimea, then he started the war in Donbass, and this was now actually already the third step, and he would go on. If he wouldn't be stopped, this would go on. This would go to Moldavia, this would go to the Baltics probably. They have a Russian minority in the Baltic states, and very surely they would clamor for assistance because they feel oppressed by the Lithuanian government or Estonian government, and then Putin might respond again, you know. So this is something we have to stop him, and Ukraine is sacrificing their population, their soldiers, their cities, to actually fight for our values, for our security. And not just in Europe, but of course also for all over the world. For us, of course, this hits very close to home. If you think the distance between Berlin and Kiev, you could compare it to, I just looked it up, you know, some of the different places, you know, I give different examples there. So here in Minneapolis, would say this is more or less the distance from here to Pittsburgh. So just imagine, you know, somebody would bomb Pittsburgh. And so this really, for Germany, this hits very, very close to home. So he said, you know, we have to support Ukraine no matter what. Of course, what's also important is that the war shouldn't spill over. You may remember that in the first weeks after the aggression, there was lots of talk about declaring a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And all the allies, the Germans, the Americans, everybody said, no, we don't do that. Why? Because if we would declare a no-war zone, a no-fly zone, the next day Putin wouldn't be impressed. He would send his MiGs up. So what would we do? We would either say, you know, we were not that. Let's really find some negotiated solution or whatever. We are not ready to fight you over that. Or you go up and shoot those MiGs down. And that would have meant a direct confrontation, direct war between Russia and NATO. And we didn't want to do that. The third thing is that he said that we have to sanction Russia now. We have to pressure them to go to the negotiating table and find some peaceful solution to that. Sanctions should hurt Russia, must hurt Russia, of course, but you also have to have sustainable sanctions. And the problem is that we, unfortunately, in Germany, we are dependent on energy imports from Russia. 55% of our gas came from Russia. We're down to 25% now, so that's we changed that. But if we would have stopped taking gas or bringing gas in from Russia, we would have had an unemployment rate of 20%. We would have had companies going bankrupt, going down, and this would have not been sustainable from our side. So we said, you know, we have to have calibrated sanctions that really do the job, hurting Russia, but we can go on with those sanctions for a year, for 2 years if we have to, and we can't lose our economy and everything over it. So that was fairly clear. The other point, and you could have seen jaws dropping and the eyes open when he declared that we would spend now $100 billion in defense security measures, and this is something that American presidents for 20 years, I mean, it's all the presidents, asked Germany and also the other NATO members actually to spend more on defense. And in 2016, finally, we signed an accord also said, okay, by 2024, we will spend about 2% of our GDP on defense. We were getting there let's put it diplomatically, slowly. And it was something that President Bush pressed us on, President Obama pressed us on, President Trump very much pressed us on there, and also Biden said the same thing. So you have to up you have to scale up what you're doing for defense, and now we're finally coming around doing that. So that's very important. And then he ended the speech also saying that we have to be sure that we have to get rid of our dependency on Russian gas, and with our energy supply to put it on a broader base, which is something that since then we have done. We are getting more gas now from Norway, we're getting more gas from the Netherlands, from Algiers. Our economic minister, Habeck, from the Greens, who was for a decade now fighting to end our dependency on fossil fuels, and he was pushing, quite rightly so, for a good reason, renewable energy. He had to go and swallow that. It was hard for him, but he had to go to Qatar to beg the Emir of Qatar, to export more fossil fuels to Germany. And German press had a field day. You might have seen those pictures also when he was greeting the Emir of Qatar, and he was just he was saying hello and bowing. Yeah, Yogi, you saw that picture, so the bowing, and the press, of course, had a field day. Said, this is Habeck is kowtowing for the Emir of Qatar, but well, he can live with that, and because we have to ensure our energy supplies, and it looks like now in winter we are scraping by. It will not be easy, and like here in the U.S., energy prices have soared. The inflation has soared. We have more than 10% right now, and so the U.S. definitely is not alone in that. And it will be hard also for individual households when they see their energy bills tripling or quadrupling now in winter. So a family who normally before has spent like 150 euros per month on getting their house warmed up, they will now look at $450 to $500 energy bills. And this for many is really, it's getting over the limit. And so the state's helping individuals as well as they're helping out companies. So let's see how we get through the winter. But we are now in the States also, we have changed our planning. Like the invasion was on February 24th, and in February of next year, a floating LNG terminal is starting the operation in the Baltic. And they have and the pipeline to bring the LNG into our grid has also been constructed. This is something that normally would take 3 to 4 years of planning, then 2 to 3 years of constructing. So let's talk 7 years if it's fast. They did this now within 1 year. So I think this shows also that our authorities have realized the severity of the situation, and I think we're hopefully doing well. Now this was it was incredible that only 3 days after what happened, that he came out with this speech, with this decisive speech, as we are definitely not newcomers to crisis. We had the 2007, 2008 financial crisis that spilled over to Germany, and I remember there Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, gave a speech together with her finance minister, Steinbrück at the time, on TV, saying, no, please, there should be no run on banks, the government guarantees you your money, your deposits, everything is safe. And there was no run, so that was very good. So this was one of the things, that worked out well, though of course the repercussions of the financial crisis also hit the German economy quite hard. Then in 2015, we had 1 million refugees coming in from the Middle East within 6 months. So and just imagine, a population of 82 million, and we are the size of Montana, and taking in within 6 months 1 million people, that was really something. Again, we had to jump through quite a number of hoops and change the way we normally do these things. I remember in on Christmas 2015, when the first 500,000 already had arrived, and the American Chamber of Commerce in California had their Christmas dinner there, and there were some keynote speakers. There was Bill Kristol there, and we talked, and he said, God, how do you do this? I mean, just imagine, 500,000 young men coming from the Middle East. Now, how do you vet them? And I said, we don't vet them at all. He looked at me and said, what? You let like 500,000 20-year-old Muslims flooding your country and you don't vet them? I said, what could we do? Should we call the Secret Service, Assad's Secret Service, and give us some background information on Mr. So-and-so, whatever and tell us, should we accept them in our country as refugee from your country or not? No, it's just something that we have to have some trust and some confidence, and of course it's taking a risk. And there were out of this, in the end, close to 1,950,000 that came in that short period. We had perhaps 4 or 5 who then afterwards committed some terrorist act or whatever. So in these 4 or 5, they could have come in any other way, kind also. So this is nothing that was a real danger. So Angela Merkel was right. And then jump forward, 2020, COVID. COVID, of course, is something that we're still reeling from. It's all the economic repercussions there. It's something that will take quite a while to overcome. And then there was the aggression in Ukraine, and that was something that prompted the Chancellor to talk about that within 3 days. I always liken our situation in Germany like a sleeping beauty. We had like 1990, the wall came down. The Soviet Union dissolved, the Warsaw Pact dissolved, the Iron Curtain vanished. Everything looked like, wow, we are heading into a bright future, and there was even, and this was not just German thinking, wishful thinking, this was NATO actually. By the end of the 1990s, they thought about offering Russia a strategic partnership. I mean, just think about that now, a strategic partnership with Russia. I mean, this is something that right now it sounds really strange, but at that time this was the thinking. And Putin was in 2001, he was giving a speech in the Bundestag, part of it in German, because of course he speaks fluent German. He was a KGB agent in Germany for quite a while, and so he knows Germany, and he got a standing ovation, believe it or not. And this was right after. In 1999, he flattened Grozny, this Chechen city, with thousands and thousands of casualties. And we all said, this is his own backyard, what he's doing there, poof. But actually with us, in Europe, everything is fine, and they're interested to increase their economy, and with a stronger interaction between our economies. There was this Wandel durch Handel, which means, change through trade, so tighter economic relations that would help them also on their way to a more democratic system. And under Boris Yeltsin, it looked for a while also that they might do that in the 90s, but then Putin came. And he gave a speech in 2007 at the Munich Security Conference, where he already reminiscent about the great old glorious days of the Soviet Union, and he would actually like to bring that back. And so there were some warning signs, and some people said, no, is this the real Putin now? And so we changed a little bit, but it was not enough. We still went on. We increased our dependence on the energy exports. You may remember this long discussion on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that goes directly from Russia into Germany. We defended that. I was one of those too. I said, come on, this is I think Obama said that Russia is a gas station with nuclear arms. I said, and a gas station needs customers. I thought he will not do anything to risk losing his customers. Well, we found out the hard way, he did. So he wasn't kept from doing whatever he has done in the meantime. So yes, there was like the sleeping beauty after 1990, and unfortunately it was not a prince who kissed us awake, it was Putin. And that was a very, very rude awakening, actually. So what do we do in the meantime? And there was this war was the first, you might called Kosovo also a war, of course, but this was more like an internal strife within former Yugoslavia. This is the first time that actually a European country tried to conquer, to destroy a neighboring country. And we were not that far away from the second and the first and second World War. I remember when I said, I'm a program director, because we was a number of them, and in our diplomatic academy we offer courses to foreign diplomats who come to Germany for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. We invite them, and we also go to Brussels for them to know a little bit more about the EU and know a little bit about how NATO works. And what I did in 1918, the last trip, because we didn't have one for 2 years now because of COVID, but the last trip, then I added another day. We went to the battlefields of Flanders, and just to show them where Europe comes from and what we are risking. This was just short time after Brexit, after the Brexit vote. This was a time when right-wing nationalists raised their ugly head for the first time in the EU also, Hungary, Poland, and so it's not that long away, and we are unfortunately also now on another very bad track on both sides of the Atlantic, I have to say. Now we just have now a new head of government in Italy. She's heading, German press says it's a post-fascist party. So what's post-fascist? It's either it's fascist or not fascist. It's like a little bit pregnant or half pregnant. You're not half pregnant, it's a fascist party. And we have a right-wing party also in the government now in Sweden. So there are more and more. And let's see what's happening here. We have, thank God, this very clear response that the West has shown with Putin's aggression was mainly due to the intensive efforts of the Biden administration. They held the coalition there together, and they put us on a very, very clear path with President Biden, with Foreign Minister Blinken, others. And if that falters, if that fizzles out, and we have already first signals there from perhaps the future Speaker of the House, who already said that, no, why should we support Ukraine? We have a recession coming up here, so our money should better spent here in the country and not somewhere abroad. In Germany, we are so far, I'm happy to say that, we're supporting Ukraine and actually supporting their fight for our values. In September, there was a poll and people were asked, now, given the prospects of the severe energy crisis, the inflation, and all the economic problems that we're facing now in winter, do you think it's still worth supporting Ukraine? 70% said yes. So this was September. This was still a fairly warm autumn month, and nobody had gotten their first energy bills. So let's see what's happening in perhaps January when you ask the same question. But I think it's safe to say that there is a widespread support in Germany, no matter what, to support Ukraine. And this is also the opposition, the main opposition party, the Christian Democratic Party, is actually further. They're ready to send more arms, heavier arms or whatever. So they're badgering the government to do more for Ukraine instead of doing less. And this is the ones that are against this assistance are just our right-wingers and our left-wingers. So it's interesting how they always, end up on the same side there. And so they are fighting for a more negotiated solution now and give Putin what he wants, and is it really worth fighting for that or whatever. So that's what you hear from those parties. And our new foreign minister, she summed up in a speech a couple of weeks ago at the New School in New York her main goals now. And she said that first of all, we have to tackle the climate crisis, because climate crisis is actually it's the source for so many challenges that we are facing. with regard to migration, regard to fighting over resources, everything, you know. So most of our challenges right now, you can somehow trace them back to climate change. And the second thing is what we really have to fight to restore our social fabric. It's like venom. It's poison for our system that if more and more the idea of alternative facts, of like election lies, things like that will gain hold, because this is destroying our social fabric. So we have to fight that. And the third thing is that she said that we have to fight for a rules-based international order. This is for globalization, for be it politically, be it economically, for all the relations, worldwide international relations. You have based this on widely accepted rules of order. And her predecessor, Heiko Maas, also spoke about that. This was before the Ukraine invasion. And he was looking west when he said that. That was during the Trump administration. So he said, you know, so even America must come back and adhere to a rules-based international order. And now Annalena Baerbock is facing east right now. And I will finish now on with these words that she said that it's really, you have to look at both sides there, and if you don't find a solution, it will be absolutely hard to go on. And President Biden, when he said in his first visit to Europe after he assumed his position in the Oval Office, he said America's back. And that came as relief for all of us in Europe. But we also said, will they stay? And this is now the big question that's before us, and we will get a first answer just in a few days from now. So there's a German word saying man kann über alles reden, nur nicht über 20 Minuten. Which means, you know, you can talk about everything, but not longer than 20 minutes. So I like to stop now here and then open the floor for a Q&A and hope for many questions, and we can go on from there. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah. Oh. Let him go. You saw my back all the time here, so I start with you. Yes.
Yeah. You talked about the aversion to spending 2% GDP on military. What are both sides of the argument? I imagine it's deeper than just not wanting to be warmongering and not wanting to collect arms. But is there economic reasons? What are the both sides of the argument?
Well, the argument was always that we have, after that disastrous Second World War, that was actually our doing and our responsibility, that we had a hard time accepting to have an army again. So only in 1955 then, actually at the prodding of our Western allies, said, hey, you have to also participate in that. We're in the middle of the Cold War, so you have to have an army. So we slowly started to build up our Bundeswehr. But we were very restrictive also with arms exports, and sending soldiers abroad was something that we didn't want to do. And so that's why we always kept also our Bundeswehr at the lowest level possible. And that was the reason. And then, of course, well, yes, I mean, it's you rather spend your money on something you find a little bit more necessary and productive than spending it on soldiers.
I think there are 5 pipelines from Norway, the natural gas ones. How vulnerable are those pipelines? I think they're natural gas.
Yeah, well, this is the big question now. I mean, the whole logistics and how vulnerable is the West, but also, of course, how vulnerable is the East, how vulnerable is Russia, because I'm sure that both nations, the US as well as Russia, they have plans there, they have preparations for all kind of like cyber attacks, or now real attacks like what they did with the Nord Stream 2 pipelines, and yeah, they're all targets. This is one of the things, and I couldn't tell you now how vulnerable, especially those pipelines are, but there is the electric grid, the energy supply, whatever, you know, the whole infrastructure is nowadays something that will be part of warfare from both sides.
I have a question about the offshore LNG. Is there an estimate on how many years that supply will last for, and is there a strategy for going renewable in the long term?
Oh, there is definitely there is a strategy to raise the percentage of renewables in Germany. This is one of the things that actually the Greens and the Social Democrats envisaged with their coalition agreement in December of last year. But right now this is unfortunately put on hold. So because we have to get our energy supply from somewhere to replace what we got from the Soviet Union. Let's just go one of the, you had one?
Can you elaborate a little bit, please, on the thinking that preceded the decision to become so dependent on Russian energy?
It was probably the easy way to go, and we trusted too much the Russians, and they offered a cheap source for energy, and the companies went for it, the government went for it, and that's the way it's a little bit too easy, you know. If you just look at how much will it cost, how much profit you will make, you know, when you use that and sell your own products. This is unfortunately the same problem that we are facing right now, and I haven't mentioned that, with China. China is the big elephant in the room, and we don't know what kind of conclusions she will draw from this whole aggression in Ukraine now. First of all, I hope that one conclusion he will draw is that, hey, it's not that easy to swallow a presumably weaker, smaller neighbor. So Ukraine has shown that nobody thought actually in the first week that they will hold longer than a week or so. And they did. And they're actually on the offensive now. So she might think, you know, hey, how will the Taiwanese react, you know, when I attack? He will also probably draw conclusions from the Western response, the close Western response. But he will also draw a conclusion that we are always raving about the 141 countries who condemned the aggression in Ukraine in the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York. 141 countries, great. 35 abstained, and those 35 actually have a greater population than those 141 combined. So there's China, there's India, there are really important players in the third world. There's South Africa, there's Ethiopia, there are others. And we have to win those over. This actually is also one of the reasons that I think Putin will not resort to the use of tactical nuclear weapons. He's saber-rattling there, and unfortunately I think he has impressed our Chancellor a little bit too much in the first weeks when he did that. But what he will face then is not a possible American response. There is so much now, and in the news also, and I remember General Petraeus was interviewed 4 weeks ago, whatever, so, and he said, oh, well, when they use them, well, I'm not privy to the deliberations right now, the defense, state of defense, but yeah, one of the ideas is perhaps sink the Black Sea fleet of Russia, things like that. I'm sure that won't happen. But what will happen is that Putin will lose whatever tacit support he had from China, from India, from all these others. He will be a pariah. If he will really use, for the first time after the Second World War, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he will use nuclear weapons in a conflict. This will cost him the rest of the support that he might enjoy. So I think this is what will keep him from doing that.
So I have a question about going back to Olaf Scholz and his declaration of 100 billion euros for defense. And yet on the other hand, he won't give them the Leopard tanks. He's not willing to give them, we're not asking NATO to go in and fight, but give them enough heavy weaponry to actually end this, because all that Putin is doing is annihilating the country. It's going to be an amazing, Ukrainian Marshall winter's coming, and I just don't understand why the Western allies aren't to say, jetzt reicht's, you know, it's like, enough, you're, you know,
But
he has
do,
this.
doing what then? Saying enough, and then what do you
Giving
want? What do they do?
them enough, giving the Ukrainians enough militarily to, you know, I know that they're saying it to be defensive, not offensive. They don't want you invading Russia.
No,
But
no,
at the same time, with now the drones coming in and attacking their electrical infrastructure and everything, it's just, it's gonna be miserable. This winter is gonna be horrific for Ukrainians. And I feel so frustrated watching from afar what's happening, and the Ukrainian people and Volodymyr Zelensky begging for more heavy weapons to really protect themselves to the end that they could maybe end this war.
No, we were kind of laggard in the beginning. The first couple of months, it took some time to really bring some heavy weaponry. We actually, and there, this was embarrassing. We had egg on our faces. It was before the aggression, European partners stepped up there with their arms deliveries to Ukraine. And what did we offer? 5,000 helmets. I mean, this was so. I mean, yes, it couldn't be more defensive than whatever, you know. So the 5,000 helmets, you know, it was like a joke, and so we were roundly criticized for that, and rightly so. But this has changed now, and I mean, everybody's talking about the Leopard. Nobody's talking about American Abrahams. Nobody's talking about the French Leclercs. Nobody's talking about the British tanks. It's everybody's talking about the German Leopards, who are actually also from what I heard is the Allies said, no, these tanks we should not deliver those. I mean, the Americans could have delivered theirs, whatever.
And they're not as maneuverable as the Leopard tanks, is what I read.
No matter what, you know, it's something that obviously, and they were within the advice of all the Allies, whatever we send in, and we send in like wide-ranging artillery and this and that. It's not just defensive, and what we are sending now, we hear from Ukraine that it makes a difference. And obviously, if you see, when you see the success in the last 8 weeks or so, it makes a difference. And even before winter, I think that they will get back a good part of the territory.
Do you think that this isn't just Germany, because it's not just Germany's issue, but what do you think the NATO group is thinking as they're looking at winter and what's going to happen to the Ukrainian people as far as altering? Is it just going to continue to be Russians sending drones in and just chipping away at the infrastructure of Ukraine? And
I hope not, but this is of course one of the things that was expected now, that he's going after the infrastructure. And but then I'm sure that the Ukrainians have the measures also to do something against that, and we have more like a very, very capable air defense systems now that we're delivering, and that will make a difference. And it could be, I don't know, if I were Ukrainian, I would probably also look a little bit more into weakening the Russian infrastructure, you know, so wherever they can do that. I mean, this was a great thing they did with the bridge in Crimea. And I would expect more like that to come. You had something, Yogi.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful speech, Stefan A. I would like to add the German industry was a super lobbyist to get Russian inexpensive gas for 50 years, beside others. When we give you the magic stick to have an all-star German government, before the backdrop there was this infighting between Robert Habeck, Lindner, if an atomic power station should run 4 months longer. And this is so frustrating to see before the backdrop of all the challenges. When we say, Stefan, we keep Olaf as a Chancellor, should be Yogi Gauck or Robert Habeck, the federal president, who else as an insider should run Germany for 18 months?
Well, our president doesn't run Germany, so I would hate if Mr. Habeck would go and become our president, you know, which he won't. I'd rather see him in an active operative role. So that's no. I think it's the team that we have right now is doing fairly well. It's with the Free Liberals. Oh God, yes. But you've got the coalition you have to work with, and that's just what we have right now. And I think they overcome their internal struggles or whatever. So that's no problem. But it is also a problem of the German companies. I mean, believe it or not, we know now how difficult it is to be dependent on an autocratic country, on an autocratic state government, and we know now what also we've been known for quite a while, the quite aggressive stance and policies of the Chinese government. And in the first semester of 2022, German investment in China grew by 26%. So German companies, they just don't want to see the dangers, and they're just investing more and more. And we have also those who don't really invest in China. We have 50% of the products of German companies directly depend on Chinese prime materials and other imports from China that they use to build their own products. If China chooses to just throttle that down a little bit, so it will be like somebody in a column the other day said, if you look at China and at what kind of havoc they can create, Putin is nothing more than an angry hamster. And I think that explains very well, where we stand with regard to China. If they chose to do something.
Yes.
I've read a good thing about green hydrogen.
Yes.
Yeah, especially for current energy. How do you think that's going in the short term as an energy source? Green hydrogen?
I'm not an expert, but I just follow the discussion a little bit, and there are more and more people who are really pushing that idea. And we just had a German delegation down in Latin America, in Argentina, and Chile, and in Uruguay, exploring the possibilities to export more from down there. And green energy is definitely for companies also is I think it's a very, very good alternative. Krista, you had your hand up?
Follow-up question
Yeah.
on your remarks on China. It's not only that German industry is investing in Chinese companies, but the recent controversy is also about China investing in German infrastructure.
Oh, definitely. We had a huge discussion just the other day about investment in the Hamburg port.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And a chip company, supposedly they want to buy a stake in a German chip manufacturer. So
Yeah, there again, it's really strange that in the Chancellery, Olaf Scholz is a little bit more open to all these things, and we are right now in various ministries developing a national China strategy. And at least from what I hear from my ministry, from the Foreign Office, and also the Economics Ministry, they will use that national strategy to alert German companies to the dangers and the challenges that might arise from an overly extended dependence on their negotiations, their dealings, whatever, with China. But well, let's see where that goes. We just had this, as you mentioned, we had an offer by a Chinese company, Costco, to invest in the German port, in the Hamburg port, and they have been invested in quite a number, I think in Athens, in Rotterdam, and quite a number of other ports. And this is, of course, a strategic investment. And many people said, no, we shouldn't let them in. And it's not 35% of the whole harbor, but 35% of a very, very large segment of the harbor. And now I heard that there has been now a counteroffer from Germany. Okay, you can get 25%. And the Chinese reaction still is out, so they have to look into if they're still interested. So, and why wouldn't they now take a 25% stake? It's just they want to have a strategic foothold in Germany or in Europe for that matter, and one has to be really, really careful about that.
One bit there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there any talk in Germany of bringing back mandatory military service? I know that for many years it was mandatory, and then you switched to a volunteer army. Is is there any movement to make it mandatory again?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. Perhaps people are thinking now about introducing like a civil service that young people after finishing school should at least spend 12 months or so in any kind of a civil service for looking after the elderly, doing this, doing that, you know. But the military service, I think this was the last time. I think this was because my son was born in 1990, and in 2008. He was the last actually, where they were calling in conscripts, but he did at that time also. He did a civil service. He didn't go to the army. He did a civil service, but that was actually, so there must have been 2008. That was the last year we had conscripts being called in. Yes.
When you look at succession scenarios with Putin in Russia, do you think the Russian problem is a Putin problem or a longer-term problem with Russia politically?
Well, we have to deal, unfortunately, you know, with whatever government a country has. So we can choose the governments of other countries, and we have to deal with what we get on the other side. And this is like a crystal ball now. What's happening in Russia? Who might be a successor? Is his position weakened or not? One thing that is really important is one should not, from our side, ask for a regime change or publicly go after regime change, because this only closes the ranks of the country, you know, that you're dealing with there. So they said, oh, but those foreigners wanted to tell us, you know, what kind of a government we have, you know, so that closes the ranks. So this is something that solely should be decided within Russia. But having said that, it's, and talking about a conscript army, then again, it's the army that invaded Ukraine on 24th of February. Those were all professional soldiers. And, well, he said, yeah, that's right. In quotation marks. But one not that professional after all. Especially their leadership there. So it's from the conscript to so small soldier in trenches to the generals. But now he's called up 300,000 conscripts, and they are being used, from what I hear, practically as cannon fodder. They're not really trained, not well trained, or whatever training they had might lie back like 10 years or whatever. Their arms also, so that they don't have the modern arms they had before, because they lost so much so far. And that's cannon fodder, and the more and more caskets are going to be sent back to Russia. This will slowly also change the sentiment in Russia. And if you have enough mothers, you know, who lost their sons there, that might weaken his position considerably and help whatever faction then might be there somewhere in looking to replace him.
Yeah.
Another energy supply question. The decision to extend Germany's operation of its remaining 3 nuclear reactors through, I believe, April of 2023. Does that signal a willingness to revisit, from an energy policy perspective, how Germany views commercial nuclear power, or is that truly a stopgap measure?
I would be surprised. I mean, there was a really heavy discussion and a very contagious discussion also between the coalition partners, between the Liberals and the Greens, about extending the operation of those 3 reactors that were still working. They were supposed to close down on December 31st, and now they've been stretched for a couple of months until the end of winter. They are not that important, actually. I think they provide about 6% of the energy. But in this time where we need every percent, we need everything, you know, so they should definitely go on and help us out over the winter. The Free Liberals wanted to at least stretch it to mid-2024. And Olaf Scholz now decided, no, this is April of next year, you know, and that's it. I hope that by then, with the next winter, we will have enough energy secured from other sources, that we really don't need those anymore. But there was really a question now about getting more burning rods now, getting new burning rods, or just stretching the ones that we have. So there was a fairly easy decision to say, okay, no, we go ahead, we just let them on the line for another couple of months. But when you start about getting new burning rods, then it's getting a little bit more difficult. And I think the Greens simply they won't go along with that. Depends, of course. Let's see where we are in February, March. You know, if this was a real harsh winter, and so they even might change their opinion, their attitude then. You know, so this is all up for discussion then. You know, so one has to take it really from month to month now. Yes.
Hi. In spite of my French accent, I'm not a Macron envoy. I'm of Swiss origin. I would like to ask a question about the long-term vision of Germany for Russia. As you know, Germany and France opposed the Bush proposal on Ukraine being able to join NATO in 2008. As you know, Germany and France opposed the 2003 Iraq invasion. And so for a very long time, which was not legal by international law. So for a very long time, Germany has tried to have some kind of relationship with Russia, and I don't mean gas, we know the reasons, a self-interested reason. You must be thinking in the Foreign Affairs Office of at some point this war will stop. Exactly how, when, we don't know. What, in an ideal world, should the role of Russia be in Europe? Would you mind giving us some insight of this discussion, or do you have no discussion on this? Because one critic I would address to the public debate in this country, yeah.
No, I was just, there was something coming in there. So
Yeah.
No, please, no.
It's okay. We don't have, I feel, enough discussion about the long term. You know, okay, we are arming the Ukrainian now, but what next? So, anything on Germany, on Russia? The future.
Well, first of all, you mentioned that France and Germany didn't follow the US into the Iraq war.
Yeah.
This had nothing to do with Russia. This simply had to do with that we were convinced that there was absolutely no reason to attack Iraq, and we wouldn't participate in that. You know, so it's I sat there with our UN ambassador the day after Colin Powell gave his quotation marks, you know, the proof that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and he was like, he said, God, I was sitting there with our minister in that meeting, and Colin Powell came up with this information that actually came from us Germans, and we passed it on to the Americans, saying, you know, this is a dubious source. Be careful. This is what we heard from them, but you have to verify that because it's kind of could be fishy. And he said, God, and this was the center of the reason to go to war with Iraq. And so of course we couldn't follow the US there. So that was, and afterwards, you know, it became clear, you know, this was Cheney and Rumsfeld and some who kind of also, let's say, doctored information a little bit. And so this had nothing to do with Russia.
I understand, but it was illegal, and we are always talking about the US standing for the international order.
It was, yeah, and there definitely the US didn't follow the rules of, yes, of course, and so
in 2008 when
in 2008, well, it was there's always a discussion that there were people saying, you know, well, the NATO shouldn't have gone eastwards, and we promised the Russians that we would not go eastwards, and now all of a sudden all these former Warsaw countries are now members of NATO. But first of all, there was nothing ever put in writing. This was something that, and to Putin also, he should know, and he knows, of course, you know, that he's not threatened by the Baltics, for instance, being part of NATO now. Actually, the Baltics need that, as Sweden and Finland now decided that we need the support and the protection of NATO against Russia. So NATO is a defensive organization, and Putin knows this. And he knows exactly that the biggest danger that he was facing on his western border with Ukraine was actually Ukraine having a thriving economy and offering their population a much better life than what Russian people could ever expect under Putin. That was the danger. And when there was more and more talk about a partnership, an economic partnership of Ukraine with the West, that's when he decided also to go into Crimea and then the Donbass. And that's where he really started to get active there.
But
So,
what is the vision of Germany
and the vision is
long term?
long term. We don't see who's there after Putin. I mean, he could stay with us for another 5 years or 8 years or whatever. This is what I said before. You have to work with the adversary that you find there. You can't choose them, and let's see. And we have at some point have to sit down with this man again. I mean, we can't say it's Russia is not a partner that you have any contact with just because there's Putin. You have to sit down with him and then try also to find some solutions. Though now there is the talk about President Biden, should he meet or shouldn't he meet to President Putin when the G20 meets in Bali, and I'm sure they won't meet. And there's even talk that Putin might not come at all, because he probably couldn't face the rejection of the large majority of the G20 members. But let's see what's happening there. But he's still somehow at the negotiating table. So yes.
Is it one suggestion I've heard about long range about how to end this conflict, which seems to be having no end in sight here right now, is the way Austria was handled after the Second World War. Is that an option? It had been brought up and then it got kind of tabled or lost or whatever, as a way of resolving Ukraine's position in Europe, or
You mean as a neutrality or
something like that?
That might be
with
the
a
end
NATO
something.
guarantee, maybe.
I don't envision Ukraine now becoming a part of NATO. I don't see it. Probably at the end of deliberations, negotiations, whatever, there might be. We have to absolutely give some provision, some security to Ukraine without them becoming real full members of NATO. This might be one of the ways, to do it, because you can't expect Ukraine to just, without any protection at all, to sit down and find a solution, because Putin might break this, in the next possibility. So that's.
Could you speak to what the fallout might be if Putin decides this winter to cut off all energy supplies to Europe, and the likelihood of that happening?
Well, he's already he's cut off again and again, because we have some technical problems and we have to do this and we have to do some reparations, whatever. So it was off and on all the time, and we have our gas storage. Thank God we have it filled to 97% now. So even if we would be cut off totally from imports, we still would have 2 months of provisions of gas. And as I told you, we are down to 25%, and this is going down by the day, 25% from Russia. So even if he would select to cut it off completely now, this would not bring us to the brink of despair or giving in or whatever. Yes, all the way up there.
How would you rate the trend in terms of communication channels diplomatically? Do you see them improving, staying the same, or deteriorating?
Again, I didn't get the beginning.
Communications, diplomatic communications leading to some meaningful peace process.
I'm sure that there always you have to have open channels and you have to make your voices heard, and not necessarily only between the Ukraine and Russia, also others. And this is one of the things also, and not just behind closed doors. This is one of the things that Annalena Baerbock said we had about 6 weeks ago, we had our yearly meeting of heads of mission in Berlin. So all the heads of mission from all over the world come together for 5 days, and we have working groups, we have speeches, we see the president, we see the chancellor, and so on and so on. And I was lucky enough, because the program directors of the Diplomatic Academy, we are always invited to those conferences. So even though I'm retired, I could participate in that conference. And Annalena Baerbock said in her keynote speech, she said, colleagues, it's we have to be more visible now, because we've seen now that there are so many countries that are not following our lead with sanctions. I mean, they might have also, there were quite a number, not just the 35 who abstained from condemning Russia, but when it comes to actually following and participating in sanctions, there are less and less countries in the third world, for instance, who will say, yes, okay, we are part of that also. So she said we have to go out and we have to be more assertive about our ideas, and not just to tell them what to do. We can't tell anybody what to do. We can explain them why we do what we do, and then perhaps convince them to follow us and then participate in the same activities. And she said this is not just also behind closed doors, talking to the members of government of your host countries, or I guess countries or whatever. You have to go out. You have to be visible. You have to be on TV every week. You have to be on Facebook. You have to be on Twitter. You have to be on Instagram, whatever. And I know that sometimes, something you will say will be badly received, and in your host country you might create a shitstorm. But so be it. No, she said, you might create a shitstorm, but no worries, whatever happens, it's better you do that than doing nothing. You have to be visible, and whatever shitstorm you create, the Foreign Office will have your back. So that was really, those were new, this was a new idea now. This was not how we worked as diplomats before, and I welcome that, so it's, I even, even before that, I was sometimes, not shying away from creating a shitstorm or so when I said something. Yes.
So I like that switch that's maybe only lightly tangentially related to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, has been in effect for a few years now. Is that generally viewed as being effective? And would it be a model for dealing with future borderless network-based risks?
I'm really not familiar with the provisions of that. I just know that unfortunately we in Germany are, in my view, overly data protective. There's whatever you do, there's Datenschutz. Datenschutz here, Datenschutz there. So this is one of the things, I think that we should be a little bit more, not so Prussian-like, and be careful, what kind of information you give out and this and that, whatever. So we should be a little bit more relaxed in that effort. But other than that, of course, this is one of the things also Datenschutz and cybersecurity. These are one of the things, these are the entry alleys, forever when you have a cyber war and when you have to do something. So it's very vulnerable, and one has to be very careful there. Oh, okay. So thank you very much.